Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. And, well, what a delight to have back with us today Abraham Hamilton. He's the Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association, and an organization that I can't say enough about. They really provide excellent resources and service, and they are so committed. And you can go to afa.net anywhere and get all kinds of information, support them. They are a faith-based organization, and the work that they do around the country is just remarkable. Abraham, good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Perry. Good to be with you again.
Good to see you. Well, here we are, Election Day. I know that AFA called for a day of prayer and fasting yesterday. How'd that go?
It went very well. We had nearly 12,000 people who signed up on the website as stating that they would join us in prayer and fasting. And I know there were an immeasurable amount of people who joined us in praying and fasting yesterday, even though they didn't sign on the website. So as you know, we're at a pivotal crossroads in our country, and one that should be bathed in prayer.
Well, and I think it was culminated last night. I know that Franklin Graham did a Facebook prayer meeting last night. It was extremely well attended as well. So there seems to be a significant turnout and involvement from the faith community on this election cycle. What do you think is the draw?
Well, I think the draw is that the American people, particularly the Christians in America, recognize that the trajectory and very well the fate of our constitutional republic hangs in the balance with this particular election.
You know, what's so interesting about this one, Abraham, is that in the past, we came to the polls based upon what we thought somebody's belief system was. Mm-hmm. and now we're faced with these two candidates, and we're not sure about either one of them. And yet, the result of the election could be catastrophic for generations to come. Do you think the faith community understands that?
I think so. I think when you take into consideration the reality that this election will determine the trajectory of the Supreme Court, and not only the Supreme Court, but the entire American judiciary for the next 30 to 40 years, I think the people are well aware of that. Just in the last 8 years, President Barack Obama appointed two Supreme Court justices, but he also was able to fundamentally, in his words, transform the appellate judiciary. When President Obama took office, there was only one appellate court that had a majority of secular progressives and liberals on the bench. At the conclusion of his presidency, now there are 9 appellate courts that are dominated by secular progressives. That is a 70% turnaround. The reason why that's so significant is that the overwhelming majority of legal cases will be decided at the appellate level. The Supreme Court only hears about 100 or fewer cases annually, whereas the appellate court hears 35,000 cases annually. The overwhelming majority of issues that are litigated will be resolved at the appellate court level. Now, the reason why that is so significant is if, for example, Hillary Clinton is able to become the next president of the United States, she will then have the ability to complete the takeover of the judiciary, which would more than likely result in the Supreme Court hearing even fewer cases, which would allow the appellate court to dominate even more. And the main concern there is when you have an appellate court that doesn't fear reversal from the Supreme Court, that would more than likely be then stacked with secular progressives, then all of the progressive fantasy land will find itself being played out at the appellate level. You have the real specter that all 13 U.S. courts of appeals could begin to look like the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the United States. So this is a pivotal election for our country.
You know, that's one of the best explanations I've heard, because so often we just talk about the Supreme Court. We don't go down into the appellate courts, and we don't go down into the circuit courts. And boy, that is so critical. We here on the West Coast, we live with the Ninth Circuit, and you just kind of throw up your hands, because I don't know what they're interpreting to be constitutional.
Well, and that's just the key. They're not interpreting anything. Appellate Court Judge Richard Posner, I mean, this is a sitting appellate court judge who said that it's a waste of time for judges to read the Constitution or to study the amendments or the discussion that led to the passage of the various Bill of Rights, because it's completely irrelevant. That the judges should be liberated, in his words, to rule as they see fit. So, for example, you being there subjected to the tyranny, I would suggest, of the Ninth Circuit. Can you imagine if all the courts of appeals became mirror images of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals? I mean, it would be disastrous for Christians in America on a number of fronts, not least of which include baby murder in the womb and religious liberty. So this is a pivotal moment in the history of the American Republic.
All right, let's talk about the abortion issue. I am surprised how many Christians would vote for Hillary Clinton because they don't like Donald Trump, and that's as far as they go. They're not taking into consideration the life issue. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I find it, quite frankly, to be stomach-turning to hear of Christians who don't understand the issue of the prevalent importance of the life issue. You have some Christians who are tempted to be lulled into this kind of false narrative of discussing that they don't want to be one-issue voters. And of course, as a Christian, of course, I know that Janet Yellen is the chair of the Federal Reserve. I'm familiar with the Treasury policies and trade policies and so on and so forth. So I'm far from a one-issue voter. But as a Christian, I understand that there are a hierarchy of issues. If you don't have the right to life, it's irrelevant what kind of fiscal policies the nations pursue. It's irrelevant what happens in terms of foreign affairs, because you don't have life. The most critical and fundamental issue that faces any civilized society is how we treat the most vulnerable among us. And so for any Christian that doesn't understand the centrality and the sheer importance of the life issue, even as it pertains to a full-throated commitment to evangelism and fulfilling the Great Commission, if we have fewer people, that's fewer people who could hear the gospel. So it's nothing wrong with having a hierarchy of issues and contrasting being a one-issue voter with being a major issue voter. And so I have little patience, to be quite frank, with Christians who don't understand the centrality and the importance that the fundamental right to live has on the American Republic.
I know that you, like me and many others, Abraham, were very shocked when those videos came out of Planned Parenthood and how the Congress, with a Republican-controlled Congress, went ahead anyway and funded Planned Parenthood. We're further down the road than we think we are on this issue.
We really are, because you have the refusal, in light of the revelations that Planned Parenthood was involved in abortions for hire, not only for hire, but even to profit from the sale of the body parts from the aborted babies. I mean, it's unconscionable. And then you follow that revelation up with a Congress, with a Republican-led House that refuses to defund Planned Parenthood. Well, of course, it appears that the runway, so to speak, has been laid for the Democrat platform, which, I don't know, just adopted as one of its planks, its desire to completely jettison the Hyde Amendment. And I'm pretty sure your listeners know what the Hyde Amendment is, but for those who may not be aware, the Hyde Amendment is a piece of legislation that's actually reauthorized annually that prohibits the direct funding of abortion with federal tax dollars. Well, Hillary Clinton is running on a platform that is advocating for the complete abandonment of the Hyde Amendment, to where your tax dollars and my tax dollars would be directly contributed towards killing babies. That goes against our scriptural prohibitions, which says not only are we not to do these sinful practices, but we are also not to support those who do them. Well, we have a presidential candidate on the Democrat side that's saying, no, we will compel you to support the systematic elimination of babies inside their mother's wombs, invading that safe space to rip them limb from limb. It's unconscionable that there's a presidential candidate that would advocate that position, but here we are in 2016.
All right, let me take a break here, Abraham, and come back. I got some more things I want to talk to you about. Today is Election Day, and I can't say enough about what the American Family Association does to keep us informed, the positions they take, the position papers that they put out. You can go to afa.net and take advantage of all those resources and support what they do. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today, and we're delighted to have back with us today Abraham Hamilton. He's the Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association, an outstanding organization that has been in the front lines of the battle in so many areas. You can go to afa.net. That is their website, afa.net. Support them, and you'll find that website to be an incredible resource. All right, Abraham, I got kind of a difficult question, and I really am anxious to hear what you'd have to say. We just talked about the Republican-controlled House of Representatives. After seeing all of the videos from Planned Parenthood, the killing of babies and selling their parts for profit, turn around and still fund them. Now we have a candidate that has obviously got problems, legal problems, far beyond anything we can possibly imagine, and has polluted the Department of Justice and the FBI, and it's possible we could still elect her as president. Given those two scenarios, what's happened to us in America? What's happened to our soul and the rule of law and the sense of right and wrong?
Unfortunately, Perry, I really believe, and with all my heart, that the candidates that we have are really a reflection of the American society. I think we stomach the corruption coming from the elected officials because, to be quite frank, much of America in our hearts reflect that same sort of corruption. It should be, well, I won't say it should be, it's amazing to behold with all of the flaws inherent in both candidates, but and more particularly Hillary Clinton at this moment. Things that have been revealed about her would have roundly disqualified her from running for office in times past. But in today's age, we've deteriorated to such a state to where it appears that we are willing to withstand this type of grotesque corruption in our leadership. And part of the reason why AFA, we called for their prayer and fasting, and I'm praying all throughout today and have been all week, is because no matter what happens with this presidential election, America's at a crossroads. And we are at a place to where we will either go full steam ahead and going off the cliff, or if we're going to slow down the pace of heading toward the cliff. And when I'm asked often by Christians how to navigate this thing, I say, listen, the purpose of civic engagement is not to act as though the government is our source of salvation. No, we have a king who's not subject to electoral processes. Nevertheless, he placed us here in our country to be salt and light. So we engage in civic process and civic engagement for the sole and express purpose of keeping the door open for the gospel. We want to make sure that we have as much room, as much freedom, and as much safety to take advantage of so that we can convey the life-giving, unchanging gospel of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But the thing that we're faced with right now is whether or not we're going to have a person who's going to populate 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who has gone on record saying that if you have fundamental beliefs, deep-seated religious beliefs that do not comport with the whimsical public policies of the day, then your religious beliefs will have to change. That's code speech for, I don't care what you believe, if your beliefs come into conflict with, for example, civil rights, the nouveau orthodoxy of civil rights of the day, which is really the sexual deviancy agenda. If your religious beliefs don't allow for abortion on demand even through the 40th week, then your religious beliefs have to change. So clearly, what's on the ballot, quite frankly, is whether or not we will have religious liberty in our country. So my concern, as to get back to your original question, is we haven't gotten to this place. And John Adams told us that the constitutional republic and the framework that we've inherited from our founders is built exclusively for a religious and moral people. It is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other people. And that is why I strongly believe you see some of the American judiciary attempting with all their hearts to shred the Constitution by absolutely ignoring it and pursuing jurisprudence.
Beautifully said, Abraham. Let me ask you a personal question. Do you think that the religious freedom, the religious liberty issue is understood in the black churches of America?
That's a good question. No, I don't. I don't think, and this is a multifaceted response, but to just cut right to the chase, we cannot have an educational system that overdoses on secular humanism, atheistic ideology, moral relativism, and postmodern worldview, and not expect to have a negative harvest as a result. The consequences of having an entire educational system that many of America's inner cities have basically sentenced their children to underperforming and absolutely failing schools have completely robbed and stripped them from having a fundamental understanding of how America came to be. They don't understand how the founders fled religious persecution. They don't understand the great debates concerning the establishment of this constitutional framework. They don't understand when Benjamin Franklin was asked out leaving Independence Hall, "What have you wrought, O Benjamin Franklin?" And he responded, "A republic if you can keep it." There are people who don't understand the fundamental rubrics of our constitutional republic, which is why they don't see how they often operate in public affairs to their own demise, because they align themselves with entities and political parties and personalities and people who are absolutely hostile to their futures. Which is why, I mean, it's common, not common knowledge, but it's undisputable fact that 78% of Planned Parenthood facilities are posted up in America's inner city communities. It's undisputable fact that Margaret Sanger harbored hostility and animosity toward black people, who saw them as human weeds and wanted to destroy them, which is why she pursued things like the Negro Project. And it's amazing that being said, Hillary Clinton has said that Margaret Sanger is one of her most admirable people, that she admires Margaret Sanger. And it's unsurprisingly that it's the same Hillary Clinton that supports partial birth abortion, expanding funding for Planned Parenthood, and the repeal and abandonment of the Hyde Amendment. So when you see that, it should call into question, when you have all of those facts put together, why there's such a passionate support. And it's less passionate than President Obama, absolutely, but why black Americans find themselves so consistently in the Democratic coffers. If we understood how our nation was brought to bear and understood those connections, I think you would see less support for Hillary Clinton. And quite frankly, I think some of this information is starting to get out, which is why you see a drop-off in support for Hillary Clinton by black people as compared to Barack Obama in 2012 and 2008.
Do you think Trump's kind of cracked into that a little bit? You think he's cracked that wall a little bit?
I do. I've had conversations with people who say, man, for the first time, there's a Republican candidate speaking to issues that affect inner city communities. And once again, it's an undisputable fact that if you look to the failing cities in America, the inner city communities, they all are dominated by Democrat leadership. You have Detroit, Democrat mayors, Milwaukee, Democrat mayors, Chicago, New Orleans, Oakland, you name them, they all are dominated by Democrat mayors. The city of Milwaukee has had nothing but Democrat mayors since 1908. I mean, we just saw the Chicago Cubs break a 108-year curse of not having won a World Series. Well, can you imagine what will happen to a city that's been subjected to nothing but liberal, Democrat, secular, progressive leadership for 108 years? Oh, yeah, it turns out to be absolute chaos and an abject failure as reflected in these inner cities. So there are people that are recognizing that not only Donald Trump, but that there is a worldview that is polar opposite to the Democrat worldview that will be a benefit for all of America, and it also will include benefiting the inner city communities in our country.
All right, Abraham, we don't know what today will bring, and we know tomorrow will show up on time.
Lord willing.
So do you think that the faith community in America really believes God is in control of everything?
If they don't, they should. One of the things I try to encourage as many believers as I can with is that you cannot forget, it's something I call maintaining a consistent theology of place and a theology of time based on Acts chapter 17. if we say we believe the Bible, we have to say we believe the whole Bible. If we believe the whole Bible, we cannot pluck Acts 17:26 out of the Bible, which says that the Lord has determined aforetime the boundaries of our habitation, which means the geographical terrain where we would live, as well the times that we would live. To say it more simply, the Lord has predetermined and has foreseen the necessity of having witnesses in this day and time in America, so much so where he put you and I here for right now. When you look all throughout biblical history, when the nation of Israel, for example, faced periods of God's judgment, the Lord has always, throughout all generations in human history, maintained a witness for himself. The prophet Jeremiah wrote, for example, Jeremiah chapter 29 was Jeremiah's prophetic writings to the Jews who were actually already in exile in Babylon. Jeremiah reassured them that this was the Lord's doing, but nevertheless, he sought to encourage them to maintain their fidelity to the Lord, even in foreign land. So what I'm saying is that in our day and our time, should the Lord tarry and he graces us with the sunrise tomorrow morning, he has done so with the express purpose that America not be void of a witness in this time. Though we face tumultuous times coming ahead, the Lord's desire is that there will be advocates of his kingdom, image bearers of the glorious King of glory, salt and light in this time, so that we can point people to the fact that, hey, we know what's happening, but there's a king above all that's happening. There is a way out of this darkness. This is the way, walk ye therein. So my encouragement to the body of Christ would be that absolutely the Lord still is in control, and in his divine foreknowledge, his control, he desires for us to join him in being a source of light, truth, and hope for people that are embroiled in the darkness that's around us.
Only thing I can say, brothers, amen. I'm glad I pitched you that softball because you hit it out of the park. Let me ask you one more question.
Sure.
And it's kind of a statement. One of my biggest concerns is this. Trump wins and the faith community goes back to sleep. Hillary wins and we lose our religious freedoms. Your thoughts?
We cannot afford, should Trump win, that means that we have more time, more opportunity to continue to engage as salt and light, to be the advocates for the Great Commission, and to follow the Lord's instruction to fulfill the Great Commission. So that is not the time to go to sleep. Should Hillary win, as I've stated earlier in this interview, yes, our religious freedoms will be in her crosshairs. She will expand funding for Planned Parenthood. Homeschooling would probably come under intense scrutiny. Ministries like American Family Association would probably get increased scrutiny. Churches, you name it, religious freedom would more than likely be imperiled. Nevertheless, what we've seen all throughout history is that in dark times, the light shines brightest. It's important to remember that even though the Lord instructed the apostles and the disciples to go into all the world to fulfill the Great Commission, it wasn't until the persecution broke out in Acts chapter 6 that they actually spread out to obey the Lord. So what I'm saying is, no matter what happens, should the Lord tarry, as I said before, and he graces us with sunrise on November 9th, it's not time for us to tuck our heads in the sand and go ostrich and act like we don't know what's going on. It's time for us to roll up our sleeves and see fit that the Lord make full use of us in the day and time that he's placed us within the land that he has placed us. His desire is for a harvest to be wrought in the midst of these fields that are certainly ripe for the picking.
God bless you, my friend. You're inspiring, and best to you and your entire staff there. Say hi to everybody. We so value our relationship with AFA, but you guys are on the front line. Thank you for what you're doing. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, go to afa.net, support them. You'll find that website to be an incredible resource. All right, Abraham, we'll connect on the other side.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Perry. It's a joy being with you as always.
All right, God bless you, pal. Talk to you soon. We'll be right back.